Hello everybody and welcome back. I am here in my quarantine room in Shanghai, China. So I'm back in China and it's day 7 of my mandatory 14-day quarantine. So my room has like no natural light. The window's small as heck. Anyway, I look like I'm delirious and I probably sound delirious because I am. I've been stuck in this room nonstop for a week already. And yeah, now that I'm over my jet lag and the crushing boredom of sitting in a hotel every day doing nothing, I finally found the energy to give you a little bit of my opinion about the NIO House concept. Before we dive in, I just want to say I'm a little bit, like I said, delirious, so if anything's unclear, oh well. So if you are watching this video, you probably also already follow NIO. Whether it's because you like the cars or because you like the brand, or maybe because you own the stock. So one thing since I've started paying attention to NIO online is a lot of the investors who are not in China, or now Norway I guess, but on Reddit, on YouTube, on Instagram, all over the internet. A lot of the most vocal people,喂，你好，okay, 可以，bye. Sorry about that. Anyway, a lot of the most vocal people online, of course, as always, are people who maybe want to complain a little bit. They are strongly against the NIO House concept, as well as other things like NIO Life or NIO Lifestyle products. Today, I will be mainly focusing on NIO House, and I will save my genuine thoughts on NIO Life and NIO Lifestyle products for a future video. A brief introduction to NIO House for those that might be unaware. NIO House is the flagship store model for NIO, the electric car maker. A NIO House consists of a showroom or a sales floor, and then an area that is exclusive for NIO owners and their friends. Each NIO House is different, but they typically have most of the same features, including a cafe, a lounge area, a library, a meeting room, a forum for activities, and a children's play area. The NIO House is generally located in the premier shopping district in the city, and it is also typically in one of the premium shopping malls and in close proximity to other high-end international brands. A NIO House is different from a NIO Space. A NIO Space is simply a sales floor. I've been to 19 NIO Houses in China, I believe, and I have posted quite a few tours, so they're all over this channel if you want to see them. Let's get started on this video where I tell you why I think the NIO House concept is good, not just for consumers, but also for NIO investors. Number one is positioning. NIO is trying to position itself in a few unique portions of the market. I'm obviously not a marketing guru, and if you are a marketing professional out there, after you watch this video, I would love to hear your thoughts, so please comment so that we can further the discussion below. In my previous professional experience, I used to work cross-department with the marketing team in our company. I learned that the concept of positioning and each company's understanding of their own position in the market is vital for their long-term success. I read Positioning, a landmark marketing book by Al Ries and Jack Trout a few years back. And by the way, it is a very interesting book. Even if you aren't in the marketing business or advertising, I still highly recommend you read it, just because it's a very fascinating book. However, I'm lazy and I don't want to reread it, so right now I'm just gonna head over to Wikipedia, the positioning page over there, and grab a few bits and bobs to share with you. Let's take a look at a few definitions. The first is from David Ogilvy, who I am sure you all know and love. He states, positioning is simply what a product does and who it is for. What does NIO do and who is NIO for? It might be tempting to say that what NIO does is simply make electric cars. Obviously, they do make EVs, but is that really what they do? Take a second to think about what they do, and we will come back to it later in the video. Next is, who is it for? If you simply consider the cost of their primary product, electric vehicles, you'd probably say for upper middle class city dwellers who are looking to buy a car. But again, we're gonna come back to this later. For now, let's take another look at the definition of positioning, this time from Ries and Trout. They say, positioning is an organized system for finding a window in the mind. It is based on the concept that communication can only take place at the right time and under the right circumstances. With regards to NIO House, we are concerned about how it communicates information about the brand to the consumer. Positioning is a mental device used by consumers to simplify information inputs and store new information in a logical place. The typical consumer is overwhelmed with unwanted advertising and has a natural tendency to discard all information that does not immediately find a comfortable and empty slot in their mind. In almost any product category that you can think of, there are only going to be probably a handful of specific brands that you will remember very easily. And this is why jingles and humor are so effective. A jingle or a talking British gecko, for example, these are simple ways to convey information that will easily slot into a comfortable position in your mind. Essentially, you don't have to think too much. And then finally, Wikipedia also tells us that positioning is closely related to the concept of perceived value. In marketing, value is defined as a difference between a prospective customer's evaluation of the benefits and costs of one product when compared with others. Value can be expressed in numerous forms, including product benefits, features, style, value for money, and so on. So when we consider the above definitions of positioning, it is really quite easily, in my opinion, to see the position that NIO is attempting to take in the market and what the NIO House value contribution is to that position. Now, before I get specifically into the NIO House, just think about what your impression of NIO might be without the NIO House, without battery swapping, without battery as a service, and without NIO Life. NIO would likely be just another Chinese electric vehicle company. You might still like their car designs, but the brand would likely occupy an inferior position in your mind if you even know about them at all. When you think about how much competition there is in the global vehicle market, if you are a car maker, you definitely do not want to be at the bottom of the positioning ladder. There are a variety of different approaches to positioning your company in the consumer's mind. A very easy one to consider is to be the first. So if I were to ask you who was the first electric car maker, you would most likely say Tesla. While that's not strictly an accurate statement, that is one of the positions that Tesla has cultivated, simply by being the first majorly successful electric car maker. At this point, you're probably asking yourself, okay, so what does this have to do with NIO House exactly? I would argue that NIO uses NIO House as a chief contributor in forcing the brand to occupy a major position in the average consumer's mind. I want you to step briefly into the shoes of a typical EV shopper in China. So here you might consider Tesla, Volkswagen, BYD, Xpeng, Li-Shang, Zeekr, who knows, the list goes on and on. The choices are damn near endless. There's so many EV cars in China. It would be pretty much impossible to remember each and every one of them. Now, unless of course you have a friend who owns a NIO and has posted themselves on social media, WeChat for example, or Weibo, in the NIO House, taking part in a fun activity, or maybe having a cup of coffee or a city drink, relaxing in the NIO House environment. Now, NIO is obviously not first, but this could be an example of NIO positioning itself as exclusive, or positioning itself according to their product benefits. You purchase a NIO electric car, and now you have exclusive access to a network of NIO houses all around China. So, okay, maybe you don't have any NIO owning friends and you haven't seen those social media posts, but maybe you are a shopper of luxury goods and you like to go to the premium malls, you like to stroll, guangjie, in order to shop for Burberry or Hermes or other designer brands. You might not be in the market for a new car now, but when you do go to buy your $1,100 headscarf, you might notice that the NIO House is occupying literally the spot right next door. You might file it away in a high position in your mind, whether you realize it or not. You need to remember that according to the positioning theory, we are always inundated with advertising. We are overwhelmed by advertising, and we tend to block it out. When we are shopping for pleasure, however, we are actively and willingly taking in new information. Simply by locating a NIO House in the immediate physical proximity of other high-end brands that the ideal NIO consumer already knows and likes and shops at, this is going to increase the chance of NIO as a brand standing out from the crowded field of electric car makers. It's very, very easy to advertise and tell consumers that you are premium or luxury or high-end. It is another thing entirely to be able to prove it to a customer. So as a young brand in a very congested market, it is vital that NIO occupies a top-level position in their market segment. Okay, the second reason I think NIO House is a good thing for NIO is the cost. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know what it costs for NIO to rent and operate a typical NIO house. I do know that they are very, very expensive. However, advertising in and of itself is expensive. If you've made it this far in this video, thank you and congratulations. But you also probably recognize that I believe that NIO considers NIO House to be an important part of their advertising and cultivating their brand image. You may not be aware that NIO as a company does not do a lot of traditional advertising that other brands do. Instead, NIO primarily relies on word of mouth from actual customers. Again, look at any YouTube video, like go look at Tesla Bjorn on YouTube, his NIO videos. You'll see a lot of NIO owners commenting on what they think of NIO and NIO service. So, okay, let's take a look at what Investopedia has to say about word of mouth marketing. Word of mouth marketing is when a consumer's interest in a company's product or service is reflected in their daily dialogue. Essentially, it is free advertising triggered by customer experience. Word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of advertising, as 92% of consumers trust their friends over traditional media. Because NIO does not typically run huge TV and internet marketing campaigns, they rely on other forms of advertising. I don't think I need to tell any of you this, but advertising is very ridiculously expensive, and the results can be at times hard to predict and hard to quantify, or entirely unable to meet brand expectations. So just think of the Super Bowl real quick. Yeah, the Super Bowl is an extreme outlier in terms of cost per second, but it is an example of both the incredible cost of traditional advertising and the significant risk involved. How many of last year's Super Bowl ads do you remember? Cost of creating the TV spot isn't even included in that cost here either. A TV ad campaign can cost upwards of tens of millions of dollars when all is said and done. TV, print, and internet ads are very expensive to create, and there's no guarantee of success. Another major way that brands advertise is with celebrities or influencers. So let's take a look at an example that hits close to home for me. For those of you that know my history, you know that I worked for a really extremely large, very successful international wedding company headquartered in China. A few years back, we organized a huge event. It was a launch party for a new brand. We hired a relatively big celebrity to attend our launch party. She's not a massive star, but she is a household name for pretty much any Chinese person, I would say from 20 to 40 years old, especially women. Again, wedding company. So this star cost us, I believe it was 300,000 RMB for 1 hour. And that was to attend our party, take photos with our chairman, and post them on her social media accounts. So that's about 50,000 US dollars for 1 hour. I don't want to tell you exactly who this star is, but some of you might know. Anyway, just before our massive launch event, there was a big scandal with her and her also famous ex-boyfriend. It had to do with pregnancy and marriage and all this stuff. So I don't remember the exact details, and I don't want to tell you anyway because, I don't want to like dox her even though she's famous. It was very embarrassing for her, let's just say that. And it was a big scandal. And again, remember, we are a wedding company. So she was meant to be promoting love and marriage, but instead she was being nationally embarrassed and scandalized because of her relationships. So she showed up to our event, she attended it, she took pictures, she did what she was supposed to do because she's a professional. And I do want to say that she was very nice to me, so thank you to her. But at the end of the day, we couldn't really use the content that we paid for. At least we couldn't use it in the way that we had anticipated and what we had budgeted for. So as you can see, using TV or traditional marketing, using influencers, these are forms of marketing that you have less control over. So now let's take a look at NIO House as a tool for marketing. I am not privy to NIO's costs and their performance metrics for operating a NIO House, and I hope I'm not beating a dead horse here, but I do believe that NIO House would be considered one of the major forms of advertising from NIO's perspective. So I want to talk generally about what it costs. I assume that some of the following things I'm talking about apply to markets globally, but since my background is in China and NIO is also primarily in China, I'm focusing on China right now with some of these assumptions. So again, when I used to work, one of my work responsibilities was basically assisting in scouting for retail space. Now, of course, a ton of variables go into the cost of commercial real estate, including the tier of the city you're in. In China, we have a tier system, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so on, as well as the location within the city, the quality of the shopping mall, the quality of the location within the shopping mall, the size of the space, and so on. If anyone wants a rundown of how each of these variables can impact the cost of retail space in China, please comment below and I'll try to make a video about that in the near future. Today we'll talk about some of them, but we're going to keep it relatively simple. In Shenzhen, we know that the average ground floor retail space costs approximately 658 RMB per square meter per month. Shenzhen, along with Shanghai and Beijing, these are tier 1 cities, and these are the most expensive cities in China, and their costs are pretty comparable. However, this 658 RMB doesn't really tell the whole picture, so I'm going to use a little bit of background knowledge from my experience. We know that NIO typically wants high-end shopping malls. We know that they want anchor locations within the mall. In China, there is no shopping mall developer that I'm aware of that is going to divvy up an anchor location into multiple units. So this means that if NIO wants a prime street-facing location, ground floor, they're going to need to lease the entire unit, and leasing a massive retail location is very expensive. Thankfully, the larger the square footage, the lower the cost will be per square meter. So for example, if you are on the ground floor in a shopping mall in Shenzhen, if you rent a very small 10-meter squared ground floor shop just to make fried food or something, the cost might be 1,000 RMB per square meter per month. Whereas if you rent a 2,000 square meter ground floor shop, all other things being equal, the cost might only be 500 RMB per square meter. This is simply because you're leasing much more space. Most retail leases in China are for either 3 or 5 years. with annual rent increases baked in. However, as an anchor tenant, NIO is probably taking on 7 or 10-year leases, potentially with the rent locked in for a period of time, such as for the first 3 or 5 years, and then potentially increasing year over year from there on. Assuming that rents only go up, which is not always the case, but assuming this, perhaps in the first year, NIO will be paying a fair market rate for rent, and then the second year, third year, potentially even up to the 5th year, they're going to be paying under the average market rate, simply because they have that 10-year lease and they're locked in. But there is another thing to consider. You have to consider who is the developer of the shopping center. I tried to look up information about NIO, and I did find that NIO has a strategic agreement with Suning, a major shopping center developer in China. They might have other agreements as well, but it's not necessarily relevant here. Now, I'm not privy to the actual details of the agreement, but from my experience in dealing with similar agreements, one that I actually worked on with a nationwide developer, again at my previous job, this kind of agreement, when Suning develops new shopping centers all around China, NIO probably has the right of first refusal for a NIO space or a NIO house, for retail space essentially, in that new shopping center in whatever city they're going to be developing in. This would guarantee NIO the prime location in every new Suning development nationwide. They probably have agreements with other brands too, such as Starbucks for, you know, the best cafe space right at the main entrance. This is just an example. Now, this kind of agreement also likely guarantees retail foot traffic numbers for the entire shopping center. So, for example, if Suning does not exceed the projected foot traffic numbers, then NIO could leave the shopping center without any penalty. This agreement also probably guarantees a below market rate per square meter, and of course Suning in return gets a prestige brand in each and every shopping mall all around the country, even in their lower tier cities, which might be harder to fill with premium brands, as well as critical infrastructure such as charging stations and swap stations. So now we take some of those variables into account, and then we take another look at the cost to rent a NIO house in a first tier city like Shenzhen, for example. Based on the factors that I already mentioned, we're going to start at 500 RMB per square meter. That's because it's such a large space. It's not going to be the average cost, right? And that's also because we might have a strategic agreement with the developer and so on and so forth. However, we're going to bump that up, let's say 40% right off the top, because the NIO house is in the best mall in the city. It's in the prime downtown shopping district. So it's not going to be the average rate, right? So now we're already back up to 700 RMB per square meter. Okay, from 700 RMB, let's take 10% off because we have a long-term lease agreement as well as a nationwide partnership with the shopping center developer. Now we're at 630 RMB per square meter, and the Shenzhen NIO house is about 2,000 square meters. However, we're also going to need to pay, management fees, garbage fees, air conditioner fees for the shopping center. There's lots of fees when you rent a shop in a shopping mall. But suddenly we're now at back up to 658 RMB per square meter. Wow, we're back to average. Would you look at that? And we're in the best location in town, so that's a pretty good deal. Again, this is all hypothetical. You get the picture, right? So now we're paying 658 RMB for a 2,000 square meter shop, and we calculate that out. Our rent per month is about 1.31 million RMB, or a little over $200,000 per month. When we look at that another way, we're going to say that's about 3.5 cars sold per month to cover the cost. Now, of course, this is very simplistic. We're not taking into the account the cost of the design and the renovation and the staffing and all the other fees that are involved in actually operating a retail location. We're just looking at the rent. Also selling, 3.5 cars in a month, we're strictly looking at revenue. That's about 1.3 million RMB in revenue. That's not profit. The profit per car is much less, so you're going to have to sell a lot more cars to make a profit, especially in a tier 1 city here. If my numbers are even close to being accurate, which I would assume they're relatively close, again, just for rent, a NIO house might actually be a loss leader. It's not going to be a profitable business in the strictest sense. But if you take into account that these are also marketing, advertising, and these are ways that NIO positions the brand of NIO in a unique spot in the consumer's mind, then you can start to see how these are worth the investment. And now we take it one step further. We realize that tier 1 cities are vastly more expensive than tier 2 or tier 3 cities especially. And then we also look at how much of the design of the NIO house is fairly standardized, if you've seen my tours. And then we also think about how becoming an anchor tenant, and we have a good relationship with the developer, now we're going to have better NIO space presence nationwide, and NIO spaces are smaller and much cheaper and probably much better at generating a profit than a NIO house. And now you can start to see that actually the NIO house location itself doesn't really need to be profitable, though it might be. And then when all that's said and done, at the end of the day, when we're allocating what otherwise would be our advertising dollars instead to retail locations, you will have a much less variable return on your investment. So if you pay for influencers, you might be subject to whatever scandal that might befall them. If you pay for traditional advertising like TV ads, you might be subject to potentially running a bad campaign. Of course, word of mouth marketing can also be fickle. Customers also might complain like the brakes on the Tesla here in China, right? However, if you believe in your product and you always back it up whenever any problems arise, then you're going to have a lot more control over your brand image as well as your costs. Last but not least, NIO is building a like-minded community with NIO House. Now, a very clear goal of NIO is to build a community of like-minded people, and they do this in a lot of ways, but the clearest one of them all is through the social functions on the app, which then lead to real-life functions at NIO House. Now, in China, work hours are often very long. In China, cities are typically very dense. There's not a lot of time in the day for people to relax. And especially for people with families, it can be really hard to find time to be together. Unfortunately, well, in my opinion anyway, the main place that people go to relax and in their downtime is the mall. Malls in China have everything from apparel to restaurants, of course, to education centers and day spas and arcades and cinemas and go-karts and now, NIO House too. So let's circle all the way back to the David Ogilvy question from the beginning. What does NIO do and who is NIO for? NIO, yes, they do sell cars, but they also sell a lifestyle. They also sell a dream. NIO sells hope for a better tomorrow. It sounds cheesy, but look at the marketing and look at what they actually do create. Look at their Instagram page, for example. Tell me I'm wrong. Think about their slogans. Blue sky coming, always forward. Look at their concept of a living room away from your home with NIO House, or a living room in your car with the ET7 or the Eve concept car. Yes, I know this is all marketing speak. This is still capitalism. The sole purpose is getting as much money as humanly possible, but we can see what their strategy is pretty clearly if we just take a second to look. It's not just selling cars. What does NIO actually do? NIO gives you your time back. NIO gives you your family back. NIO gives you the chance, the opportunity to have a well-balanced, comfortable, pleasant life. Again, I repeat, this is marketing speak. I don't necessarily believe this, but this is the story that NIO wants you to understand about what they do. Even if it's not explicitly stated, it's not just selling a car. So who is NIO for then? Obviously, anybody who is overworked and overstressed and anybody who wants to reclaim their own time. Time with their family, time with their friends, time to be a part of a community. Anybody who doesn't want to waste all of their time in the office, or waste their time charging their car on the way home, or waste time considering which wine to order online, or what activity their child should partake in on the weekend. Through their entire brand ecosystem, what they're actually doing is selling you a curated NIO lifestyle that promises to make your life worry-free and give you your time back. Again, think about my worry-free insurance package that I told you about. Think about battery swapping. Think about mobile charging of your car. Think about all the things that NIO actually does for their consumer. They don't just sell you a car and let you go on your way. Now, we circle back to NIO House, since that's the topic of today. If you are a user that actually makes use of the NIO House, you're going to be able to interact with people of similar social and economic demographics as you. You're going to be able to send your child to learning and social activities where they can make friends, and you will have exclusive access to a quiet and comfortable environment where you can sit back and have a coffee and have an abundance of time and a leisure-filled day with far fewer decisions that you personally have to make. Now, if you're a prospective buyer of a NIO in a big city in China, this could potentially be a big selling point for you. I don't presume to speak for everybody, but I can see how it could be a selling point. Now, even if you buy your NIO and you don't actually ever go to the NIO House to take part in activities or have a coffee, even if NIO doesn't give you a worry-free, time-abundant life, this could still be a big selling point. So not only are they not spending a great deal of money on advertising and marketing, that money that they do spend on it is theoretically actually given back to their consumers in something like a NIO House. And that's it. There you have it. Those are the reasons why I actually believe in the NIO House concept and why I think that the NIO House is fundamental to the current marketing strategy that NIO employs, and that I think NIO House is fundamental to the very brand identity that NIO wishes to occupy in the consumer's mind. Now, if you still think it's a bad idea, if you disagree with me, if you somehow have made it actually this far and you listen to everything I said, that's freaking awesome. Thank you for that. But please discuss it. Let's talk about it. Do you still think it's a bad idea to have a NIO House? Do you think it's a waste of investors' money? I've probably been to more NIO Houses than almost any NIO user. You know, I don't love them, but I do see value in them. So thank you for watching. Wow, it's a long one. I better get back to my quarantine. Bye.